My name is Lucas, and I'm a chef. The kind of chef who believes that food is more than just food. It's memory, it's art, it's the only thing that can make a person feel at home, even if they're miles away. I had a small restaurant, a bistro. It was my dream. We won awards, we were featured in magazines. But passion and awards don't pay the bills. And after an economic crisis and a 2-year struggle, I closed the doors. I went bankrupt. From the dream of being a renowned chef, I ended up in an industrial kitchen, making food for an airline. It was a slow death. I spent my days preparing hundreds of identical portions of bland chicken for passengers who would barely look at their food. My art had become an assembly line. It was in this desperate state that an old colleague, who now worked for an elite recruitment agency, called me. "Lucas," she said, "a position just opened up that's perfect for you. Private chef for a couple. The salary is indecent, and they want an artist, not a cook." I felt a spark of hope I hadn't felt in a long time. The interview was in a luxury office with a young, modern personal assistant who spoke in a mix of corporate speak and social media jargon. "Look, Lucas," she said, "my clients L&S are the biggest power couple in Brazil in the lifestyle and wellness niche. Their image is everything. They need a chef who understands healthy, photogenic, and of course, delicious cuisine." L&S. Leo and Sophia. I knew exactly who she was talking about. Leo was a coach, a millionaire mindset guru who sold online courses and filled auditoriums. Sophia was his wife, a full life and gratitude influencer with millions of adoring followers. Together, they were the picture of perfection. The digital age's picture-perfect family. The assistant explained the job. The day-to-day was simple: cook healthy meals for the couple and occasionally for their 2 young children. But then she got to the special events clause. For the big dates, she explained, Christmas, New Year's, anniversaries, the family likes to celebrate with productions. The chef will be responsible for creating a complete banquet for 20 or 30 guests. The menu, the presentation, everything needs to be spectacular, worthy of a magazine cover. It's your chance to shine. For a chef who had been cooking airplane food, the idea of creating spectacular banquets with no budget limit was a dream. I accepted on the spot. A week later, I was in their kitchen. It was a movie set kitchen, white, minimalist, with German appliances and a marble island that looked like an altar. The whole house was like that, a gigantic white mansion that looked like a modern art museum, beautiful but cold. Not a single family portrait, not a single object out of place. Leo and Sophia were exactly like they were in their videos, smiling, positive, talking about vibrating on the frequency of success and gratitude. But I, having learned to read people in the hot, stressful kitchens of restaurants, noticed something in their eyes when they thought I wasn't looking. A weariness, an emptiness, as if their batteries were always running low. My first month was quiet. I cooked light, healthy dishes. They ate, praised them, and spent the rest of the day recording videos for the internet. The first major event was to be their wedding anniversary. The assistant's order was clear. "We want a memorable banquet. Theme, secret garden. Think flowers, delicate dishes, a magical experience for 30 people. I threw myself into the work. I spent days planning the menu. I created dishes that were true works of art. I ordered the rarest and most expensive ingredients. For me, this was my chance to be the chef I once was, to show my art. On the day of the event, the house was transformed. A team of decorators arrived and turned the dining room into an enchanted forest. The gigantic table was set for 30 people, with the finest china, crystal glasses, and flower arrangements that seemed to have sprung from a dream. My small team of helpers, whom I was allowed to hire for the night, and I were working at full steam in the kitchen. The food was turning out incredible. The aroma was divine. Everything was perfect. At 8 in the evening, the appointed time for the guests to arrive, Leo and Sophia came down the stairs. They were stunning, a movie star couple. But they didn't come to the kitchen. They went to the dining room, and they weren't alone. With them were a photographer and a videographer. For an hour I watched them from the crack in the kitchen door, and what I saw was theater. They didn't welcome any guests, because there were none. They posed. They smiled at each other, sitting at the heads of that immense, empty table. They made a toast with champagne, looking into each other's eyes as the camera rolled. Sophia took out her phone and recorded a series of stories. "Everything is ready to welcome our dear family and friends for an unforgettable night. My heart overflows with gratitude to have you here," she said, to an empty room. Leo recorded a longer video, talking about The importance of celebrating life's milestones with the people we love. And there was no one there, only the staff. After exactly 1 hour of content production, the photographer and videographer left, and the house plunged into a deep, strange silence. I was in the kitchen with my team, waiting for the order to start serving the banquet. The appetizers were ready, the main courses perfectly timed. The assistant entered the kitchen. She had a clipboard in her hand and a satisfied smile on her face. "Thank you, Chef Lucas. The production was a success. The content turned out incredible. It's already going viral," she said. "Thanks," I replied, confused. "And the guests? Can I start serving the appetizers?" The assistant looked at me with a genuine expression of surprise. And then she laughed, a short laugh, as if I had told a naive joke. "Guests?" she said. "What guests, chef? There's no one in the house. The event is over." I looked at her, not understanding. "But what about the food, the banquet?" She shrugged. "You can have your staff throw it all away, or split it among yourselves if you want. Mr. and Mrs. Vance are just going to have a quinoa salad here in the kitchen in 10 minutes. They have a live stream to do soon." I stood there, stunned. I looked at the mountain of perfect, untouched food on the counter, the filet mignon, the saffron risotto, the scallops, all destined for the trash, and I looked through the door at the magnificent, silent, and completely empty dining room. That night, I prepared the best banquet of my life, a banquet for 30 people, and I discovered that the only guests were the 20 million ghost followers who lived inside their phones. The revelation of that first anniversary dinner was a punch to the gut. But the truth is, a man with my debts doesn't have the luxury of a very sensitive conscience. I needed the job, so I kept quiet, and I officially became the chef of the ghosts. That night repeated itself, and repeated. Every holiday, every commemorative date, the ritual was the same. Thanksgiving, a gigantic turkey, roasted to perfection for 8 hours, with all the trimmings, for a table set for 20 empty chairs. Easter, a Patagonian lamb, served with an herb crust that took me 2 days to perfect, for an audience of 0 people. I got used to the absurdity. I got used to seeing pounds of lobster, of filet mignon, of white truffles worth more than my rent, being scraped from untouched plates into black trash bags. At first, it hurt. It hurt my cook's soul. But over time, the pain turned into a kind of bitter internal joke. I was the highest paid artist in the world for creating works of art that no one ate. And behind all the staged performances for the cameras, the couple's real life was a desert. After the stories were posted, after the gratitude videos were recorded, the masks came off, the smiles disappeared. The house, already quiet, became heavy. I would see them sometimes from the kitchen door, sitting at opposite ends of a gigantic sofa, each on their phone without exchanging a word. The only communication was through numbers. "Our engagement on the last video dropped 4%, Leo, the husband, would say with a frown. "The color palette of your post today isn't harmonizing with my feed," Sophia, the wife, would reply. "You need to warn me beforehand." They weren't a couple. They were 2 partners in a marketing firm whose only product was their own invented life, and the millions of followers they had. I began to suspect they were as ghostly as the guests at our dinners. The comments section of their posts was always the same. Thousands of generic comments in different languages saying, "Great post, awesome, so inspiring." They were bots. They were purchased numbers to feed their egos and justify their advertising contracts. They were, in fact, the 2 loneliest people I had ever met in my life, surrounded by monumental wealth and fabricated popularity, but fundamentally alone. And that loneliness, that sadness, seemed to be the only explanation for their madness. I felt sorry for them, and the pity helped me justify my job and my salary. I was cooking for 2 image addicts in a desperate attempt to fill a void that no food could ever satisfy. At least, that's what I believed. The story I told myself began to crumble in the preparations for the New Year's Eve party. The order from the assistant was, as always, grandiose. "Chef, this year the theme is Golden Extravagance. We want everything with a touch of gold. A party for 50 guests. The budget is unlimited." I was used to it by now. I started planning the menu, making the shopping list for the ingredients. And as always, the assistant handed me the spreadsheet with the budgets and approved suppliers for the party's other services, decorations, drinks, and so on. I was checking the list when an item caught my attention. An invoice from a new supplier, a company with a pompous name, Edible Gold Delights LLC. The invoice was for the supply of 24-carat gold dust and platinum leaf for dish decoration. What made me pause wasn't the item. Using edible gold is a tacky new money cliché, but it's common. What made me pause was the amount. 50,000 reais. I read it again. 50,000 reais. In edible gold. As a chef, I know how much edible gold costs and how far it goes. It's expensive, yes, but a small vial with a few grams, which costs a few hundred reais, is enough to add a golden touch to dishes for 100 people. 50,000 reais. With that amount, I could gold plate the entire kitchen. It wasn't just an extravagant amount, it was an amount that made no practical sense. It had to be a mistake. I went to the assistant, spreadsheet in hand. "Excuse me, I think there's a typo here," I said, pointing to the line. 50,000 reais for edible gold? I only need about 2 or 3 grams. The amount should be 500 reais, right? She looked at the spreadsheet, and for the first time, I saw her look flustered. A quick flash of panic crossed her eyes before she put her corporate efficiency mask back on. "Oh no, chef," she said, a little too quickly. "It's not a mistake. It's just that this supplier works with a service package. The price isn't just for the product. It includes the brand's exclusivity, application consulting, the ingredients branding. It's complicated. Just approve the budget. Accounting will handle the details." The explanation was so flimsy, so illogical, that I was left speechless. Ingredients branding? What the hell was that? But I got the message. Don't ask questions. Just approve it. And I approved it. A few days later, the order from Edible Gold Delights arrived. A large box with a golden logo and an impressive design. I opened it, expecting to find pounds of gold. Inside the box was a sea of black silk, and in the center, nestled in a velvet holder, was a single tiny glass vial. Inside it, a few flakes of gold, maybe 2-3 grams. Enough for my recipe. A product that, on the market, would cost no more than 500, maybe 600 reais. I picked up the small vial, and I looked at the invoice that came with it. An invoice for 50,000 reais. I stood there in my million-dollar kitchen, holding that tiny vial of gold dust that was worth almost nothing, and the invoice that was worth a fortune. The wasted food, their loneliness, the obsession with image, all of that was their madness. A sad madness that I could understand and even feel sorry for. But this in my hand wasn't madness. It wasn't sadness. It was math. Math that made no sense at all. And for the first time, I had the feeling that the food I threw in the trash wasn't the only rotten thing in that house. The New Year's Eve party was my most cynical job yet, as I, with the tip of a pair of tweezers, placed a 50,000 ray flake of gold on a canapé that no one would eat. I watched the couple. Their performance was sharper than ever. Hugs, smiles for the cell phone camera, declarations of eternal love to an empty dining room. They were brilliant actors, and I was the cook in their theater. When the assistant gave me the usual order, "You can throw it all away," I did what I was paid to do. But while my team threw pounds of lobster risotto and filet with truffle sauce in the trash, I kept one thing. The invoice from Edible Gold Delights LLC. That piece of paper felt like it was burning in my pocket. I had to understand. The story of sadness, loneliness, a life of appearances. All of that explained the wasted food. But it didn't explain an invoice overcharged by almost 100 times the product's value. That was something else. It wasn't emotion, it was business. And it was a business that stank. That night, after cleaning the kitchen, I went to my room, turned on my personal laptop, and began my investigation. The first step was obvious. Who was Edible Gold Delights LLC? Their website was beautiful. High-quality photos, a clean design, testimonials from satisfied customers who had no last names. It looked legitimate, but I, having owned a restaurant, know that the facade isn't everything. I looked up the company's official registration number. I found it, and I ran the number through a public business directory website. The first red flag. The company had been opened just 3 months ago. Its registered capital was 1,000 reais, and the registered address was in one of those downtown office buildings that house hundreds of shell companies, in rooms rented by the hour. It was a paper ghost. An idea occurred to me. I took the budget spreadsheet the assistant had given me for the New Year's Eve party. There were other exclusive suppliers on it. Imperial Decor, responsible for the flowers and arrangements. Murano Crystal Glass Service, responsible for the drinks and dinnerware. I ran each of their names through the system. The result was the same. They had all been opened in the last 6 months. They were all registered at the same shell address. They all had beautiful websites and no real market presence. It wasn't one strange supplier. It was a network of ghost companies recently created that issued invoices with absurd amounts for parties that never happened. My heart started to race. I was onto something big, something that went far beyond a sad couple of influencers. But I still didn't understand the mechanism. Why create fake companies to issue invoices to themselves? What was the logic? It seemed like a complicated way to lose money, unless the money they were spending needed to be justified. The answer to my question came from an accident, a real accident, in the midst of all that fakery. A few days after New Year's, the main kitchen's industrial dishwasher short-circuited. There was smoke, a small fire, and the fire sprinkler system went off, flooding the entire kitchen. No one was hurt, but the place became a war zone. The dream kitchen was unusable. The assistant came to talk to me, with the worried air of someone who sees a problem in their productivity spreadsheet. "Chef, the repairs to the main kitchen will take at least a week. In the meantime, you'll have to use the support kitchen." "Support kitchen?" I asked. I didn't even know there was another one. "Yes," she said. "In the garage annex, it's smaller but functional. Mr. Leo used it to record some cooking videos at the beginning of his career. It's a bit dusty, but it'll do." She took me there. It was a small kitchen indeed, and it was more than dusty. It was a storage room, boxes of old recording equipment, tripods, light reflectors, and in a corner, a pile of cardboard boxes. As the assistant showed me the stove, my eye caught the labels on the boxes, and I felt a shiver. The names were there: Edible Gold, Imperial Decor, Crystal Glass Service. They were the empty boxes from our ghost suppliers. They were the props for their theater. "Well, that's it. If you need anything, let me know," the assistant said, and left, leaving me alone in that sanctuary of lies. I couldn't concentrate on cooking. My eyes were fixed on those boxes and the old file cabinets in the corner of the room. That kitchen hadn't been used in years. Maybe they had forgotten what was in there. I waited until night, and then I began my search. I opened one of the file cabinets. It was full of old papers, old contracts, invoices from the time when Leo was still a second-rate coach, and at the back of a drawer I found it, a folder, with a title that shouldn't have been there: Investments, British Virgin Islands. My heart leaped. I opened the folder. Inside, there were no contracts. There were bank statements from an account in the name of a shell company with a complicated name, and I saw the flow of money. I saw huge deposits coming into that account from sources I didn't recognize, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars, with vague descriptions like digital marketing consulting or image royalties. It was the dirty money, the money that didn't come from online courses or detox tea ads. And then I saw the other end of the operation. In another folder, I found the statements for their real company, the influencer company. And there were the payments of absurd amounts, exactly the amounts on the invoices I had seen. 150,000 reais to Imperial Decor, 50,000 reais to Edible Gold. The money was leaving their clean account and going to the accounts of the shell companies. I stood there in the dust of that forgotten kitchen with two bank statements in my hand. One showed the dirty money coming into a tax haven. The other showed the clean money going out to pay for parties that didn't exist. And suddenly I understood, with a clarity that made me nauseous. The ghost dinners, the wasted food, the inflated invoices, their sadness. It all connected. It wasn't about image, it wasn't about loneliness. It was about money laundering. The food I cooked and threw away was just a detail, smoke and mirrors, the alibi to justify a much larger crime. The real trash was the money they were trying to clean, and my kitchen, Aski and my art, was the laundry. I returned to the main kitchen the next day, after the repair crew had finished their work. The smell of smoke was gone, but to me, the entire place felt contaminated. Every pot, every knife, every marble countertop, everything seemed complicit in the crime I had discovered. The first few days after my discovery were a hell of paranoia. The fear was a physical thing, a metallic taste in my mouth. Every time the assistant entered the kitchen, my heart pounded. Every time Leo or Sophia walked down the hall, I would lower my head and focus on what I was chopping, afraid they could see the truth in my eyes. They were criminals, and the pity I had felt for them, it had turned into disgust. Their image, smiling and talking about gratitude to a cell phone camera, while deceiving millions of followers and laundering dirty money, was grotesque. They weren't lost souls. They were predators, and their followers weren't fans. They were the flock. I thought about leaving, just packing my things and disappearing. But I knew it wasn't that simple. I knew too much. And people who set up money laundering schemes don't usually let their witnesses just resign. And to be honest, a part of me didn't want to go. A part of me, the part that had seen my own restaurant dream go up in smoke, felt an anger, a desire for justice, to see their house of cards come crumbling down. I continued my work, but I became a reverse spy. I had the photos of the bank statement saved on a tiny flash drive, which I hid inside a jar of coarse salt, and I started paying attention to everything. My amateur investigation continued. With the names of the shell companies and offshore accounts I had found, I dove deeper into the internet. And what I found was even dirtier than I had imagined. I discovered the origin of the money. It came from a giant pyramid scheme, disguised as a millionaire mindset course and an investment club that Leo himself promoted to his followers. He would convince thousands of people to invest their savings in a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and the money, instead of being invested, was funneled to the offshore accounts. The ghost dinners were the final stage. It was how the money stolen from their own fans came back into their pockets, clean and legalized, as profit from their event companies. He wasn't just lying to the public, he was stealing from them, stealing from the very same people who commented, "You changed my life," on his posts. The cruelty of it gave me the stomach to do what I needed to do. I couldn't go to the police. I was, technically, an accomplice. My name was on the purchase orders, the budgets. I was their alibi, but I could sabotage the machine from the inside. The perfect opportunity came a month later, Sophia's birthday. The assistant approached me excited. "Chef, for Mrs. Vance's birthday, we're doing our biggest production yet. The theme is A Night in Versailles. The budget is the biggest ever, 1 million reais in expenses." She handed me the spreadsheet, and there they were, my old acquaintances. Imperial Decor, Edible Gold, and a new one, a company called Deep Sea Fine Fish. Their invoice was for 200,000 reais for the supply of rare Tasmanian lobsters and Iranian caviar. Another ghost, another inflated invoice. It was my chance. I analyzed the spreadsheet for a full day, and I prepared my move. I called the assistant for a chat in the kitchen. My tone was serious, professional, the tone of an executive chef concerned about the quality of his event. "I'm reviewing the supplier list for Mrs. Vance's birthday," I began, "and we have a problem." She looked at me, surprised. "A problem? Mr. Vance has already approved everything." "I know," I continued, pointing to the line on the spreadsheet. "But this supplier, Deep Sea Fine Fish, I'm not familiar with them. And with all due respect, the price they're charging for this caviar is 3 times the market value. But my main issue isn't the price, it's the provenance." I was using their language, the jargon of the luxury world. "I made a few calls," I lied. "None of my contacts in the luxury seafood market have heard of them. And more importantly, they haven't provided me with the sanitary import certificates I require for any seafood that enters my kitchen. The product's traceability is questionable." The assistant looked at me, panic beginning to form in her eyes. She was an errand girl. She didn't understand the scheme, she just followed orders. I delivered the final blow. "Look, the food safety of this house and the reputation of Mr. and Mrs. Vance's kitchen are my responsibility. I cannot, in good professional conscience, approve this supplier. There is a risk to the family's health and image. I refuse to use their product. Cancel this order. I will use our regular, trusted supplier, who costs 1/3 of the price and has all the proper certificates." I had cornered her. I used the logic of the real world against the logic of their world of fraud. How could she argue? By saying, "No, chef, we need to spend 200,000 with this fake company to launder our money," she stammered. But Mr. Vance, I can't just cancel." I held my ground, cold, professional, unyielding. "Then he'll have to come speak to me personally," I said, crossing my arms, "and explain to me why I should risk his family's health with a product of dubious origin. I'll be waiting. Checkmate." The assistant, pale as wax, just nodded and rushed out of the kitchen, phone in hand, probably to call her boss. I stood there, in the middle of my kitchen laundry, waiting. The silence was tense. I had just sabotaged a 200,000 real transaction in their scheme. I had thrown a wrench in the gears of the machine. I didn't know what would come next. A firing, a threat. But I knew one thing. The time for cooking in silence was over. I had forced the head of the gang to leave his boardroom and come to my kitchen for a talk. The game had begun. and I was ready. I waited in the kitchen. Every second felt like an hour. I rehearsed in my head what I was going to say, my arguments about food safety, about the house's reputation. They were my weapons, my armor of professionalism. The kitchen door opened, and Leo walked in, the millionaire mindset guru. He wasn't with his wife. He wasn't with his assistant. He was alone. And to my amazement, he didn't look angry. He looked curious, almost amused. He walked slowly through the kitchen, looked at the perfectly polished copper pots, at my organized ingredients, and then he stopped in front of me. "Chef," he began, his voice calm, almost friendly. "My assistant Amanda is a little flustered. She tells me we have a problem with our seafood supplier." I maintained my posture. "Yes, sir. We have a provenance problem. The company in question has not provided me with the import and sanitary certificates I require to work with. I cannot guarantee the quality or safety of their product. Therefore, I will not use it." He stared at me for a long moment. A heavy silence settled in the kitchen. I could feel my heart beating in my throat. I expected him to yell, to fire me, to threaten me. Instead, he smiled, a wide smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're smarter than I thought, Lucas," he said, using my first name for the first time. "Much smarter." I remained silent, confused. "You're right," he continued, shrugging. "That supplier is not ideal. It's a new company, inexperienced. Your attention to detail, your concern for provenance, it's impressive. It shows a level of professionalism that I value." He was agreeing with me. "In fact," he said, leaning against the marble countertop, "that's exactly why I need to talk to you. I'm tired, Lucas. Tired of dealing with these details, with these spreadsheets, with these third-rate suppliers my team finds for me." He looked at me, his eyes shining with a predatory intelligence. "I think you're being underutilized here, just cooking. I have a proposal for you, a promotion." I stared at him, speechless. "I don't want you to be just my private chef anymore," he said. "I want you to be my manager of gastronomy and events, for all our properties, all our productions." What does that mean?" I managed to ask. "It means you'll be in charge, total control," he explained. "From now on, you create the network of suppliers, you manage the budgets, you approve the invoices. I give you a figure for each event, and how you spend that money is your problem." He moved closer, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial tone. "Let's take Sophia's birthday as an example. The total budget for the suppliers is 1 million rays, correct?" I nodded. "Great," he said. "All I need is for the sum of the submitted invoices to be 1 million rays at the end for our accounting. Now, if you, with your expertise, can find real, quality suppliers to make the party happen for 200, 300,000 rays, what about the other 700,000? Well," he smiled again, that shark-like smile. "Consider it a bonus for your efficiency, a bonus for your discretion, and for your intelligence in not asking the wrong questions. Do you understand what I'm proposing, Lucas?" I understood. With a clarity that made me nauseous, he wasn't offering me a job, he was offering me a partnership. He wasn't asking me to be a blind employee, he was inviting me to be an active accomplice, to set up my own network of shell companies, to issue my own fraudulent invoices, to take a slice of his criminal pie. It was a proposal of corruption, the most elegant and brutal one I had ever received. I stood there paralyzed, trying to find air to breathe. He had completely disarmed me. I came for a fight, armed with arguments about food safety, and he responded with an offer to make me a millionaire. He seemed to sense my hesitation. He turned to leave, but stopped at the kitchen door. "By the way, Lucas," he said without turning back, "Amanda, my assistant, did some research on you when we hired you. She told me about your old restaurant, the Bistro, a small place, but it had great reviews. She told me your dream was always to reopen it." He turned and looked at me with a piercing gaze. "Think about it. With the kind of efficiency bonus you could get in your new position, you could open 10 restaurants like that one, without worrying about the price of ingredients, without worrying about the bills at the end of the month. Think about what you could create. Your art, without limits." And with that, he left. I was left alone in my impeccable kitchen. The smell of food was gone. Now, the only smell in the air was that of a rotten temptation. He hadn't threatened me. He hadn't yelled. He had done something much worse. He had offered me the chance to become him, to use my passion, my art, my identity as a chef, as a tool for crime. And he had used my biggest dream, my greatest failure, as the bait to pull me down into the abyss with him. The question burning in my mind was no longer, what are they doing? It was a much more terrible question. It was, How much does my dream cost? I stood in that kitchen, the silence broken only by the soft hum of the wine fridge. Leo's offer hung in the air, dense and tempting. He hadn't just offered me money. He had offered me the chance to erase my greatest failure, to resurrect my dream, and the price was just my conscience, a trifle in their world. I spent the whole night awake, thinking. I thought about my years of hard work, the sweat, the passion I had poured into my bistro. I thought about the pain of watching it all turn to ash. I thought about the humiliation of having to cook airplane food to pay the bills, and I thought about what Leo had told me. Your art without limits. What wouldn't an artist do for the chance to create without limits? The next morning I went to Leo. He was in his private gym, running on a treadmill, his eyes fixed on a screen with stock market charts. I've thought about your proposal, I said. He slowed down the treadmill and looked at me without stopping his run. And? I accept, I replied. I'll be your manager of gastronomy and events. But on one condition. I'm listening, he said. I want total control, autonomy. You give me the budget, I give you the invoices at the end. No questions in between, he smiled. Welcome to the team, Lucas. You learn fast. And that's how I descended the remaining steps to hell. And I discovered that hell was surprisingly well decorated and profitable. I became a master in the art of the sham. I created an ecosystem of shell companies that were masterpieces of bureaucracy. Names, addresses, websites, everything looked real. I negotiated with the real suppliers, getting the best prices because of the volume. And then I issued invoices from my ghost companies with amounts 10, 20 times higher. I was efficient. I was good at it. Too good. With every ghost dinner, every event that never happened, my secret bank account, my efficiency bonus grew. And with every deposit, a piece of my soul died. I stopped feeling sorry for the couple. Our relationship became purely transactional. They were the heads of the cartel and I was their best operator. With the money came power, and with power I finally realized my dream. A year after that conversation in the kitchen, I opened my new restaurant, Liqueur 2.0, The Heart, version 2. It was everything my old bistro was, but amplified. Bigger, more beautiful, more luxurious. I hired the best chefs, the best sommeliers. The critics hailed it as the most important restaurant of the decade. The waiting list was months long. On opening night, Leo and Sophia were there, sitting at the best table, smiling for photos, posing next to me. Our protégé, Leo told the journalists. We always knew he was a genius, and I would smile back, playing my part in their theater. I had made it. I was at the top. I had my dream back, bigger and brighter than ever, and all I had to do was sell my soul to get it. It was a price that on most nights I thought was worth it. The story could end there. The story of the chef who made a deal with the devil and won. But the devil, as they say, is in the details. On a Tuesday night, a few months after the opening, my restaurant was packed. I was in my office in the back, reviewing the accounts. And then I received a message on my cell phone. It was from an unknown number. A single sentence and a link. The sentence read, "I think you'll want to read this." The link was to an article on an investigative journalism blog, a small but respected blog. The headline of the article was, "Liqueur 2.0, The Taste of Fraud, an investigation into the ghost suppliers of the restaurant of the year." My blood ran cold. I read the article. The journalist somehow had done what no one ever had. She hadn't investigated me. She had investigated my supply chain. She discovered that the supplier of my Wagyu beef, my truffle importer, my distributor of rare wines, were all shell companies. Companies registered at the same address, with the same front men as directors, the same web of lies I had learned to weave with Leo. The article didn't accuse me directly. It just asked the questions, dangerous questions. Where did the money for such a grand investment come from? Why did the suppliers of such an acclaimed restaurant seem not to exist? I knew what it meant. It was the beginning of the end. Someone had turned me in. Someone had given that journalist the first thread. And then my phone rang again. It was him, Leo. "Lucas," he said, his voice calm, unsurprised. "I saw the article. Amateur work, I must say. Leaving such obvious tracks. I expected more from you." "Was it you?" I asked, my voice a whisper. "Did you turn me in?" He laughed. "Of course it was me. You didn't think I'd let my intern set up a competing business with my own method, did you? I gave you the rope, Lucas, and you hung yourself with it beautifully." "But why?" I asked, fury and confusion consuming me. "You already have everything." "It's a business lesson, my dear chef," he said. "The final lesson. Never, ever trust anyone, and always, always maintain control. You were getting too big, too famous, and famous people with secrets are a liability. I needed to prune you, to put you back in your place." I was silent, listening to my empire crumble live over the phone. "But I'm a generous man," he continued. "I'll give you a way out. Disappear, vanish. Leave the restaurant, the fame, everything behind. I'll take care of the mess with the press. In return, you come back to work for me, in my kitchen, by my rules, forever. You're a good chef, Lucas, but as a businessman, you're still just a cook." He hung up. I stood there in my luxurious office in my dream restaurant, looking at the article that exposed my fraud. He hadn't given me a choice. He had given me my sentence. I had flown too close to the sun, on wings made of dirty money, and now I was melting. Leo taught me the most valuable lesson of all. It's not about the food you serve. It's about what's on the invoice. They thought they had bought me, that I was their chef, a piece in their game. But the truth is, I was just an intern, and that night, looking at my own empire in flames, I understood that I had graduated with honors. I didn't just reopen my restaurant, I opened my own laundry. And business was too good to last.